I tried to talk. I want you to remember that. I tried to reach out. I tried to understand you. But I think you understand us perfectly. I think you just don't care. And I don't know whether you're trying to invade, infiltrate, or just replace us. I don't suppose it really matters anymore. You are monsters! That is the role you seem determined to play. So it seems that I must play mine. The man who stops the monsters. I'm sending you back to your own dimension. Who knows, some of you may even survive the trip. And if you do, remember this. You are not welcome here. This plane is protected. I am the Doctor, and I name you the Boneless. Hello and welcome back to the Doctor Who Marathon. I'm your host McEdam, and today we're going to be talking about the Series 8 story, Flatline, written by Jamie Matheson and is directed by Douglas Mackinton. And this story was a story that when people were there were trailers for it, and there was descriptions of it, and everybody who heard about this story absolutely laughed their asses off. One of my main memories when this series was airing, and we had the trailer and the ideas of this episode coming out, and we also had that next time trailer from the last episode, and you saw the Doctor in the tiny toy police box. Everybody just bursted out laughing, and it was a story which a lot of people were basically expecting to be bad. A lot of people going into this story thinking, you know what, it's going to be horrible, but at least we're going to have a laugh. At best, it'll be like a Love and Monsters situation where it's so bad it's good. Now, Jamie Matheson, he wrote this story originally back in 2011 for Matt Smith's second series, but it got rejected by Stephen Moffat for various reasons. However, Matheson brought his idea back for the incarnation of the newest Doctor, Peter Capaldi, and Stephen Moffat really liked his script so much that after a few redrafts, after Peter Capaldi was made, the time slot that Matheson had for his episode was a time slot in which Peter Capaldi had to have limited screen time. So essentially, this is a Doctor-like adventure, even though you can't really tell because the Doctor's in it quite a bit. We'll explain that when we talk about the story itself. And essentially, Stephen Moffat really liked his script so much that he actually then asked him to write another script, and that is how we got Mummy and the Orient Express, the episode prior. So actually this story actually was written and developed first, and then Mummy on the Orient Express came out. And the fact that Mummy on the Orient Express was just a huge blast, and at the time is easily one of Capaldi's best stories, the 12th Doctor's best stories, and actually, you know, when that episode ended and then you come to have this story, which is written by the same guy, in fact, it was because of this story he got to write that story. Somehow, this story suddenly became a little bit more interesting. And what this story proves is that Jamie Matheson just really knows how to develop the 12th Doctor. The story also introduces the character of Ritzy, played by Jovan Wade, and he becomes like an important character later on in the series of Series 9. This also introduces a brand new villain, the Boneless, which never appeared again on screen. However, doing my research for this episode, I've discovered that the Boneless actually become a recurring Doctor Who monster in the 12th Doctor Who comic books. I don't know if that's Titan or Doctor Who magazine, I'm not quite sure, but they have a recurring role and have become one of the 12th Doctor's main recurring villains in his franchise. So basically the Boneless in the story were his breakout monster. When you think of the 12th Doctor, one of the villains that you might think of, if you don't count Missy, is the Boneless. So that's quite interesting. But does this story hold up? Does this story develop our characters and thing in a particular way? Well, when the story came out, when it aired, the public consensus is that, we had some people who really liked it. for the genuine a good plot and good storyline. And some people who kind of want going into it, kind of like me at the start, who going into the story is like, right, this is going to be absolutely hilarious, and came out of the story thinking basically the same thing. That at least it was a hilarious attempt of creating a Doctor Who story. You can clearly tell that this would be the low budget episode of the series. In fact, it's kind of surprising how this episode isn't the story that aired just before the finale, because that's usually the Doctor Who trope. But if you have a cheap episode, the cheapest looking episode at the very just before the finale kicks in. So that's kind of strange and unique. But then again, the Caretakers also had a very similar production schedule, production in terms of its budget. So there's that. I don't know. I've completely rambled off. So the story: the Doctor and Clara are in the TARDIS, traveling to try and get back to Cohill School, where Clara has told Danny that he is going. That she's going to give up this life for the Doctor, but she lied to him. She pretended to lie for him at the end of the Mummy Orient Express, so that she could travel with the Doctor. But of course, she told the Doctor that Danny is fine with this. However, something happened. The Doctor takes her to the right time, the right place in history, only at a different spot in Earth. In fact, this story takes place in Bristol, so that's really cool. And something is happening with the TARDIS, something strange, something eerie. And Clara looks out at the door, and she notices something extraordinarily odd. And she calls the Doctor to come forth, and the Doctor doesn't realise at first. She's just like Clara's like, "What do you on about, girl?" He doesn't say that, but he thinks about it. And then he looks at the TARDIS doors, and he spots it too. The TARDIS doors have shrunk, and the Doctor opens the doors, he goes through, and the TARDIS is now like half the size that it was, and the Doctor's just absolutely baffled by this. I really like the dynamic of Clara wanting to get home, and the Doctor's just like absolutely in amazement. You know, this is something that he doesn't know anything about. This is something completely unique and strange to him, which so rarely happens, as he says. There's a great moment where Clara's just like, this is annoying, and then the Doctor's like, "No, this is astonishing, this is amazing, this is annoying, come on, just let me enjoy my piece," which kind of just claims that like the 12th Doctor's so sarcastic and so just blunt about things. Like he literally just tells Clara that she's annoying. I just got a kick out of that. But the Doctor goes into the TARDIS to try and investigate it. What's happening, whilst Clara examines the situation around in Bristol, as the Doctor didn't want her to go into TARDIS just in case something wrong happens and Clara is accidentally squished in the pressure of the TARDIS, somehow shrunken from the inside. However, the shrinking continues to compel forth, and this is what keeps the Doctor essentially out of the adventure, as the TARDIS shrinks again to a size of a toy model of the TARDIS. Now, apparently that's not an actual toy model. That was an actual prop that was designed specifically for this episode. But they could have just saved a bunch of quid and bought a toy TARDIS. Nobody would have guessed, personally. But this does lead into some hilarious moments. So basically the Doctor's trapped in the TARDIS as Clara in the outside world is the one who investigates the strange going on. She becomes the Doctor of the series, and this also plays into her storyline, into her character arc, something which would be told even further in series 9. The idea that the Doctor is influencing Clara to be more like him, but it's becoming a kind of a disturbing, toxic, kind of like the Doctor isn't proud of the fact that he is essentially influencing her to become more like him, because the Doctor knows that this lifestyle, this chase for the adventure, this adrenaline rush, it can be incredibly dangerous and perverse in some way. And this episode puts that at the forefront of this story. Okay, we've had teased about it at the end of Mummy Orient Express. So if anything, what I'm saying is that Jamie Matheson really got the dynamic, particularly from the 12th Doctor and Clara, and it's his episodes that basically pushed the characters even further, which Stephen Moffat would thankfully pick up in series 9. So that out of the way, and Clara investigates and she finds that there are people going missing, and there seems to be this kind of shrine of all the missing people, of them painted on the walls. Whilst she's there, she meets up with some, what do you call them? I want to say civil servants. No, not civil servants. Where it's like you've done a small petty crime, so you're just doing community service. That's what you go, they're doing community service. And this is here that we get introduced to Ritzy, a graffiti artist. He likes his graffiti, and because of that he got caught, and he's basically being punished by cleaning up the Bristol City by a character named Fenton, played magnificently by Christopher Fairbanks, who the character of his is pretty one-dimensional. He's basically there to be this grumpy sod character who basically like is the first person to doubt Clara, the first person to try and be like take control of everything and look at the most bleakest way possible. There might also be a hint that this character is old-fashioned in the sense that he might be a little bit racist, because Ritzy is a character of colour and he treats him a lot less disrespect than he does with other characters like Clara, and later on a train driver who just kind of finds himself in the story. But Clara learns basically of this investigation of missing people, and she gets Ritzy to help him. She explains that she is the Doctor, but sometimes called Clara, and she's like, I don't know why I call myself the Doctor. Maybe it's because I got a huge ego, and I just like the sound of it. And the Doctor can hear everything Clara's saying, and the Doctor's just absolutely fuming with her. Some really great dialogue and some really great moments with them. But then we get introduced to the common plot element. When they go to one of the missing rooms, the rooms of one of the missing people, there's this weird painted... in the pre-credit sequence, we were in this room, we've seen this guy being captured, and we have this really great visual where you kind of see this kind of strange pattern on the wall, and the camera tilts itself in a way like it's an optical illusion, where if you angle it in a certain way, it looks like a image, and the camera pans to the side of the wall, and we see this man who's been taken seemingly out of nowhere, painted onto the wall. And we are in this room again, and we don't see that painter, but we do see this new strange painting, which kind of seems like a desert of sorts with broken bits of hard stone everywhere, which our characters don't really bring up, and it's really strange. But then we get some really great cinematography in the story when we see Clara basically introducing Ritzy to the Doctor. That shot when Ritzy's looking in the TARDIS, and you can see the TARDIS, and the Doctor's like, he's gone into distance, so it doesn't look ridiculous, and his face is like constantly like up there. Though there are some shots like that, and they're absolutely brilliant. But that shot when he's like standing by the console from a distance and Ritzy's talking to him absolutely blew my mind. I was not expecting this story. Like I said, this is the one that everybody was expecting was going to be the Love and Monsters Series 8 to turn out to be a really fascinating adventure. And I really like the idea of this kind of detective story, but with the companion taking over the role of the Doctor. And with Clara having a much more experience, shall we say. I mean, she's met like a majority of Doctors at this point. She's met 10, War, 11, technically every incarnation pre-Capaldi, and of course Capaldi himself. So this kind of idea is kind of being put forth. And I know a lot of people kind of cringe at that because Clara isn't a particularly loved companion. And I do understand that. Like, if you've watched my videos, you understand that I've had my own grievances with Clara, especially with the relationship with Danny Pink. But I feel like here it works because it does delve into a much harsher, but also kind of an interesting dynamic between her relationship with the Doctor, and her relationship with herself, essentially. And it all sums up at the end of the story. But let's talk about the villains, the Boneless. They're actually not named until the very end of the story. And what I really love about this story is that it keeps their motives extraordinarily hidden. In fact, we still, to this day, or at least not in the TV anyway, I haven't read the comic books that are a sequel to this story, but we never find out what the Boneless want, what they're doing, why they're trying to get into this world. Essentially, they are two-dimensional beings coming from a 2D universe, and they're seemingly trying to pour themselves into a 3D environment. When they capture people, they seem to dissect them. We later learn that the pattern on the wall that looked like a desert isn't actually a desert. It is a microscopic look at human skin. They capture a policewoman seemingly killing her and use and show her nervous system on the wall. And essentially what is happening here is that they're chucking these people into the 2D universe that they exist. And they seem to be like moving around on the surfaces. These kind of strange like wiggles of imagery on these walls, of distorted imagery, and they capture people and they try to dissect them, trying to figure out what's going on. And what I really like about this story is, from the Doctor's and Kara's point of view, they've seen aliens, they've been around, and they kind of understand that this could have all been a massive misunderstanding. Maybe they just want to communicate, maybe they're trying to explore like humans going out into space or something, but they don't actually know that their universe is killing these people, that these people need 3D environments to survive. There's a scene where the Doctor tries to communicate with these creatures using pi, and they seem to have noise receptors. They can hear and communicate noises like a code of sorts. The Doctor uses pi, and they send out a signal saying 45 or something like that, which is actually one of the name tags of one of the people that they captured earlier. And then they name another person who they later then capture, because he has a name tag of 22, and they say 22. And although everybody around them is taking this extremely hostile, thinking it's like, right, they're picking us off, they're trying to kill us, basically killing us for their amusement, the Doctor and Clara are both like, well, maybe they're like showing us that they can count. Maybe they're trying to show us that like we can read your names. And maybe they're trying to like say, don't be afraid, we understand you understand your names, your number patterns, so, come to us, we won't hurt you, we won't harm you. And this leads into some really great visuals. This story, despite having a very low budget, has some really impressive special effects, barring one particular aspect of the story. But I really like this kind of optical illusion based episode. I really wish that we kind of pushed itself a bit further. There's a great moment where you see this kind of sofa kind of getting flattened into the wall. You see people like in their legs kind of turn into like paper on the floor as they're getting absorbed by the floor. There's a great moment when they see that guy and he's just kind of standing there, and Clara kind of notices he's still a bit. So she moves her head and he realizes that he's kind of been like integrated into the background, and it's kind of like a painting on the thing. There's a lot of like optical illusions like that. Now, Jamie Matheson, the writer of the story, he's also he also studied the arts and crafts. And so when he was pitching the story, one of the things he did was actually create concept art for what he decided the monsters would essentially look like and do. And so that really influences the idea of the story. And despite the fact that this is on a low budget, and Douglas McEdam does a really great job here at bringing Matheson's script and these visual ideas to the screen. I'm an absolute sucker for optical illusions like that. So this episode, this kind of idea for a monster was really going to appeal to me regardless. But like one of my main things is that there's this mysterious, it's basically the creatures themselves are an optical illusion. We don't know, they could be completely hostile, and or they could be completely caring and loving. But our characters, that's like, it shows you exactly where these characters are coming from. With Riggsy kind of becoming the middle ground, so maybe they're killing us, maybe they're not. Clara and the Doctor, they really wish and hope that these people are nice creatures, but they understand that they can't put human lives at the risks of the hopes, the chance that these people, these creatures, these entities are good guys. And then you've got Fenton, who just absolutely hates them, just wants to try and destroy them as quickly and as soon as possible in the hopes of survival. And this takes them down into the train tracks underneath, as they're running away from the Boneless. And we get some really great monologues from the Doctor. Peter Capaldi's basically left in the TARDIS, and McEdam's directing and Capaldi's acting. You never get bored by these scenes. There's a great moment where Clara accidentally drops the TARDIS on a train track, and there's a train coming, and Clara basically comes up with a plan for the Doctor. It's like, can you move the TARDIS like the Thing from the Addams Family? And you get probably one of the funniest one. I think it's one of the clips that was shown for the Next Time trailer, which everyone burst out laughing, where you've got the tiny TARDIS and you've got the Doctor's fingers coming out to it, dragging the TARDIS away from the train. However, though he gets out of the direction, the TARDIS falls back onto the train tracks, and so the Doctor, what he decides, he takes the TARDIS into a much more defensive mode, which actually blockades its original TARDIS design. However, it means now the TARDIS is barricaded from the outside universe, and he does not quite sure if Clara can hear him or not. And the story makes it look like Clara can't until like the very end, where it's spoilt and where Clara reveals that she actually heard everything. That you would have made a mighty fine Doctor. But like this bit of the directing is that there's no real hint that Clara can hear the Doctor, so it is kind of strange. And so Clara basically, because the story at this point, that you're not supposed to know that Clara doesn't know that the Doctor, that she can hear the Doctor. Basically, Clara's left off on her own, and she comes up with this idea with Riggsy coming up with an art. She puts down a leaflet. She puts the blank side on the table and is like, "Okay, Riggsy, I've got an idea. We need you to paint something absolutely amazing, something so realistic it'll fool these creatures. These creatures have now come out and taken the form of the people that they've kidnapped throughout Bristol, and turning them into like 3D mannequins. Now, although the actual effect, the CGI work, really doesn't hold up, I don't even think it was that good in 2014. The idea of these human forms warping, and they're not really, like, there's a lot of gaps in their visuals, and you've got these cranky, almost zombie-like walks. It's really a disturbing and really cool looking monster. And the fact that they don't say anything, they do not speak English in any way, shape or form. It's just so cool. And so they're going after our TARDIS team, and leads into the final climax where they shoot at this door which our characters have hidden behind. However, they're not actually behind it. This is actually a painting that Riggsy did of opening the door, of going through the door, the energy beams going through the door, and the energy source actually hits the confounds of the TARDIS, and the Doctor wakes up and we get that massive speech at the end. Now, Capaldi's a fantastic actor, and everybody has that defining moment. Though I think Mummy on the Orient Express is the story that defined his Doctor, it's here, that speech, that moment, that bit where he stands up, he's just like, I don't care anymore if you're good or bad. You are harming people. You are in my way, and I'm going to stop you no matter what. That is the first defining moment of the Capaldi era, and he's the one that names the Boneless, and you've got the 12th Doctor theme blasting, and Capaldi's full of confidence, really great and fantastic work as he sends them all back to the 2D universe, the 2D dimension. The ending of the story has our characters waving goodbye to each other, with Fenton basically is like, oh, those people who died, they are worthless. I won't be losing any sleep on them. And walks off, and the Doctor's just like, the wrong people, so maybe the wrong people survived today. With Ritzy just like thanking the Doctor and Clara with his newfound confidence of his work, and the Doctor's just like, your work today saved, your piece of art today saved the world. I can't wait to see what you do next. Ritzy here, he's not really, like, he's an interesting character, and you do hope that he survives throughout the episode. But it's not like so important that you would think he becomes a recurring character, to which he does. It's really strange. I think Jovan Wade and Jenna Louise Coleman are friends in real life, and that's why he was brought back for next season. I'm not quite sure. But his character here is interesting, he's nice, he's kind, but there's nothing really much to him than that. But anyway, one of the defining moments, also at this point the Doctor learns, because he hears Clara talking to Danny Pink at the phone one scene, and the Doctor realises that she's been lying to Danny and lying to the Doctor about this agreement. And at the end of the story, the Doctor basically admits that Clara made a great Doctor, made a fantastic Doctor. Being actually good, being a good person, had nothing to do with it. And that just basically sums up their relationship in this adventure. As Clara, she kind of feels a little bit guilty at the end of the story. She kind of sees this, but she's not giving up. The adrenaline rush that she gets from traveling with the Doctor is now revealed, at least to the audience anyway, is shown to be a bit too much. Something that might even devalue her as a person and per se. And that's really interesting. And so that is Flatlined. Overall, there might not be much meat to the story, but the meat it does have is really great and really interesting. For a story that either a lot of people weren't interested in, or were interested in for all the wrong reasons, this story had proven that Jamie Matheson and Douglas Mackinton, Peter Capaldi, Jenna Louise Coleman, and all the supporting cast were really great at their work, and despite the silly concept of the tiny TARDIS, really pulls off actually a pretty fun and decent adventure. Though I prefer, looking back, Mummy on the Orient Express, I remember really loving the story coming back. I don't like it as much as I did when it first aired, but it's still a great time, it's still a blast. Highly recommended from me, especially that final moment where the Doctor sends the Boneless back into their own dimension. And yeah, there's nothing really much to it than that. It's just a fun, small little adventure with certain details and certain elements of the story I really do love. So if this sounds interesting to you, highly recommended it from me. So anyway, that's Flatlined. So join me next time when suddenly something has just overgrown the entire population of Earth. And something has almost taken over the Earth and nobody has no idea. It's up to the Doctor, Clara, Danny Pink, and a bunch of school children to solve the mystery. So join me next time for In the Forest of the Night. And I'll see you next time on the Doctor Who Marathon. Ta-ra!